Welcome back, students. It's time to get back to business. We have lesson 4-4 from Sabbath, where we're going to be expanding expressions using the distributive property. So, let's go ahead and get started, and let's go to the board.
Topic 4-4.
All right, students, now that we're at the board, let's review the distributive property. For starters, we're going to take the number outside the parentheses, including if it has a negative, and multiply it by distribution to each term inside the parentheses. So this negative 3 is going to multiply by 5x. Negative 3 times 5 is negative 15. And then the x is just multiplied to it, so we just write the x next to it. Then we take that negative 3 and multiply it by the positive 6. So negative 3 times positive 6 is going to be negative 18. And that's it. Now, the same process is true if we're using a fraction. In the second example, we have 1/2. So that 1/2 is going to multiply to everything inside the parentheses. 1/2 times 4. So when you multiply a fraction by a whole number, the number gets smaller. 1/2 of 4 is 2. And again, since the x is there attached to it by multiplication, we just leave the x. So 1/2 multiplied by 4x is 2x. Then this 1/2 multiplies by a positive 10. 1/2 times positive 10, 1/2 of 10 is 5. Now that we've reviewed how to use the distributive property to solve problems, let's look at a real-world problem. The school was planning to add a weight room to the gym. If the total area of the gym and the weight room should stay under 5,500 square feet, what is one possible length of the new weight room? Show your work. Are there any other lengths that would work? Why or why not? So first we have to recognize that in order to get the area, the total area, we would have to do length times width. This would be the width, and this would be two different lengths. The 90 feet we know for the basketball court, plus the other length for the weight room. Now if you look at this, we have the same width on both ends of this rectangle. So there's a common factor of W, or 55 feet, multiplied by 90 feet and x feet. So how would we write this as a distribution problem? Think about that for a moment. Since the 55 feet is the same on both ends, but the length is different, 55 is the common factor, so it goes out front. Then in our parentheses, we have 90 for the first length for the basketball court, plus x, which is the length of the weight room. Now we use distribution to solve the problem. 55 multiplied by 90. 55 times 90, we can use our calculator here. 55 times 90 equals 4,950. 4,950. Then we multiply 55 times x, so we have plus 55x. This is the solution to the problem. Let's try another. A family plans to add a tomato patch to the end of their orange orchard. What's the total area of land that will be covered by the tomato patch and the orange orchard? We do not know the length of the tomato patch, but we do know its width. So we can label the length of the tomato patch as x. And as in the previous example, the width of 1.5 kilometers is the same on both ends. So how would we write this as a distribution problem? 1.5 is the common factor, multiplied by x and 2.5. So again, we take our common factor, we distribute by multiplication, to each term inside the parentheses. 1.5 times x is 1.5x. 1.5 times 2.5, again from our calculator, 1.5 multiplied by 2.5 gives us an answer of 3.75. Now it's also possible that we have to distribute when we have a variable being distributed to everything inside the parentheses. And there might even be another variable, like in this case where you see a y. That's okay. We're going to do everything exactly the same way. Here we go. Since x is the common factor, it's going to be distributed by multiplication to each term inside the parentheses. Remember, each term is separated by either a plus or minus sign. So, this x gets multiplied to -2, which would give us -2x. Then the x gets multiplied to a -0.5y. Now, since this is not a number that we can easily multiply, all we're going to do is rewrite it, and now that term has an x and a y. Because if you remember, when you have a constant multiplied by a variable, there's an invisible multiplication that happens right in between. So the answer would be -2x minus 0.5xy. Here are two more questions we're going to try. First, we have a t as the common factor, which we're going to multiply by -1.2w. So again, since this is a variable we're multiplying, we don't know how much that is. So we're just going to add it to the list. -1.2 tw. Then t multiplied by 3 gives us plus 3t. For the second one, we have a lot going on down here, but it's okay. We're going to make it work. We have a common factor of s being multiplied by -1 1/5. So we have -1 1/5 s. That s also gets multiplied to the second term, which is -3.5t, which becomes -3 1/2 st. Then we have that plus 2s over here. Now again, we would have to combine these terms that are the same, which would be the s terms. They get combined. So we still have the -3 1/2 st, but now we combine these two terms. So if I have 2 plus -1/5, I'm going to have a positive 4/5 s. So what do we do if there's more than 2 terms inside the parentheses? Well, we're going to just multiply it the same exact way. We're just going to have multiple terms, and we may have to combine at the end. So -2/5 multiplied by 10. Well, that's not as easy as the 1/2 we did earlier, but here's how we make it a little easier. Since this 10 is really going to be over 1 as a fraction, here's how we can address this. We take the -2/5 multiplied by 10. 10 times -2 is -20, and -20 divided by 5 gives you -4. So the first term is -4. Then we multiply -2/5 times 5/6. -2/5 multiplied by 5/6. Multiply across. -2 times 5 is -10. 5 times 6 is 30. If we reduce this by dividing by 10 top and bottom, we get -1/3. So we're going to have -1/3 m. And finally, the last term, we have -2/5 multiplied by -20, basically over 1. So -2 times -20 is positive 40. 5 times 1 is 5. If we divide this out, 40 divided by 5 gives us 8. So that will be plus 8n. There's your answer. Now let's review. First, you have to distribute the common factor to each term by multiplication. Now watch out for those negatives because they will change the sign of your answer. When you're multiplying fractions to whole numbers, remember to add the 1 as a denominator to help you out with those multiplications. And number 3, if there are any like terms, be sure to combine them in your final answer.
Alright students, now that we've covered topic 4-4, you know how to do distributive property with fractions, we're good to go. So, see you next time.